You know that specific sensation when you open your banking app, and instead of that familiar drop in your stomach, you actually feel a sense of relief. It's that moment when you stop doing mental gymnastics about whether a latte fits the budget, or if a grocery run means surviving on instant noodles for the rest of the month. There is a precise financial milestone where this flip occurs, and it is definitely not the number most people expect. Most financial experts scream that you need a net worth of $1 million to feel secure, or that 6 figures is the only target that matters. But they are overlooking something crucial. There is a much earlier, reachable finish line that fundamentally rewires your entire relationship with capital. Once you cross it, the whole game changes. That number is $20,000. My name is Mr. X, and I obsess over the psychology of money. Specifically, why some people seem to build momentum effortlessly, while others spin their wheels in the same financial rut for decades. If you are tired of wishing for wealth and want to understand the actual mechanics of how it's built, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button if this perspective shifts how you view your finances. Now, before we break down why $20,000 is the ultimate tipping point, let me pose a question. When you visualize wealth, what do you see? Maybe it's a lottery winner who never had to clock in, or perhaps it's someone grinding 80-hour weeks, stacking pennies for 40 years. The reality is, wealth accumulation doesn't operate the way we're taught. Here is the actual physics of it. There are invisible financial gravity wells. Once you break out of their orbit, the physics of your life change. $20,000 is the escape velocity that divides the people who will eventually become wealthy from those who will stay trapped in the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck. And the wildest part, most people don't even know this barrier is there. Visualize it like this: you are trying to push a stalled car up a steep incline. The first few feet are agonizing. You are pushing with everything you have, sweating, barely moving an inch, wondering if it's physically possible. But once you crest the top of that hill, the dynamic flips. The car starts rolling on its own, picking up speed. Eventually, you're just guiding it as it races down the other side. $20,000 is the top of that hill. Everything before this number feels like fighting against gravity. Everything after this number feels like gravity is finally pulling you forward. But here is where it gets fascinating, and this might catch you off guard. The shift isn't just about the math. It's not just that you have capital to deploy. The real transformation happens inside your head. When your savings are at zero, your brain is locked in what psychologists identify as survival mode. Every choice regarding money is clouded by anxiety and scarcity. You accept a low-ball job offer because you can't afford to wait for the right one. You endure a toxic living situation because moving requires a deposit you don't have. You agree to overtime you hate because you need the cash flow. This isn't about being bad with money. When you are in survival mode, your brain literally shuts down long-term planning. It's like trying to learn a new language while a tiger is chasing you. Your mental bandwidth is maxed out just trying to make it to Friday. However, something incredible occurs when you secure that $20,000 buffer. Suddenly, your mind has room to breathe. Instead of panicking, "How do I pay rent?" you start asking, "How do I multiply this?" Instead of reacting to disasters, you become proactive about your future. Data from major financial institutions shows that even a tiny buffer of $2,000 boosts perceived financial wellness by over 20%. Just $2,000. That's less than the price of a high-end MacBook. Yet that small safety net triggers a massive psychological release because it pulls you out of the danger zone. When you expand that safety net to cover 3 to 6 months of expenses, which usually lands right around $20,000, that sense of security compounds. You have finally bought yourself the mental clarity to focus on wealth creation rather than disaster prevention. And this is where the math starts to get really fun. Let's assume you are putting away $1,000 a month with an 8% annual return. Reaching that first $20,000 is a grind. It takes about 19 months of dedication. That is over a year and a half of saying no, staying disciplined and waiting. It is grueling, and honestly, this is where most people quit. But here is the fact that should keep you going. Your second $20,000 does not take 19 months. It only takes about 17. Why? Because now your first $20,000 is in the trenches with you, generating its own interest. Consider that. You worked just as hard, saved the exact same amount from your paycheck, took the same market risks, but you reached the milestone 2 months faster simply because your capital was doing the heavy lifting. That is the engine of compound interest finally turning over. By the time you are chasing your third $20,000, the timeline shrinks again. Your money is doing a larger percentage of the work while your effort stays static. And when you reach the six-figure marks, the speed becomes ridiculous. Once you have a portfolio of $400,000, your investments can generate that next $20,000 chunk in just 5 months. The same sum that took you nearly 2 years of sweat equity to build initially is now appearing on autopilot. The first step is the hardest. Every step after is progressively lighter. Now, you might suspect that rich people have access to some VIP-only investment tier that unlocks these results. Like there are secret doors that open only when you show a heavy bank account. While that exists for billionaires, it is not what drives this specific phenomenon. The secret is much more boring and much more accessible. It's just volume. When you invest $1,000 and it rallies 10%, you make $100. Apply that same 10% gain to $10,000, and suddenly you've made $1,000. Same market, same time frame, same fund. The only variable is the size of your stack. This is why crossing $20,000 feels so pivotal. Before that, your gains feel like pocket change. A 10% bump on $2,000 is $200. Nice, but it's not changing your life. But a 10% bump on $20,000 is $2,000. Now we are talking about a sum that moves the needle. If you have $20,000 invested earning a standard 8%, that is $1,600 appearing in your life every year without you clocking in. That is income you didn't trade time for. That is money born from money. You don't need a complicated strategy. You can use the same index funds and apps as someone with $50. The difference is simply scale, and scale turns small percentages into tangible freedom. But here is the hidden benefit that most people overlook, and arguably, it is the most valuable part of this journey. When you successfully save $20,000, you haven't just stacked up cash. You have fundamentally reprogrammed your brain and installed the most critical habit you will ever possess. This might sound like motivational fluff, but stay with me because the practical application is huge. Think about the effort required to save $20,000 from scratch. Unless you inherited a windfall or earn a massive salary with zero expenses, this requires grit. You had to audit your spending. You had to decline invitations so you could bank the cash. You had to fight the urge to splurge on the latest trend. Most importantly, you had to maintain that focus for a long time. Here is the payoff. You proved to yourself that you are the master of your money, not its slave. You became the kind of person who can choose long-term gain over short-term pleasure. That isn't just a budgeting hack, that is a character trait. This identity shift impacts every choice you make. Before you had that nest egg, a $5 coffee purchase might have caused stress. After $20,000, you don't sweat the small stuff because your foundation is solid. You know you have the discipline to handle the big stuff. There is another mental shift that kicks in here. You stop seeing threats and start seeing opportunities. When you are broke, an unexpected bill is a crisis. The car breaks down, the laptop crashes, rent hikes. These aren't just annoyances, they are disasters that ruin your month. But with $20,000 in the vault, these turn into minor hiccups. Car breaks, annoying but fixable. Laptop dies, time for an upgrade. Rent goes up, maybe it's time to buy. Even better, you start spotting chances you were blind to before. A friend launches a startup and needs seed money. Before, you would have said cool and walked away. Now you can actually look at the business plan and invest $5,000. A rental property hits the market below value. Before, you'd scroll past with envy. Now you can run the numbers. Your company won't pay for a seminar that could boost your career. Before, you'd skip it. Now you can invest in yourself. This is what people mean when they say money attracts money. It's not magic, it's optionality. Having cash gives you options, and options lead to more cash. Here is something else that happens at the 20K mark that contradicts standard advice. You stop caring about the $5 decisions and start focusing on the $5,000 decisions. When funds are tight, you obsess over pennies. Generic brand versus name brand, gas prices across town. These micro decisions drain your energy. But with a solid foundation, you realize those choices are mathematically irrelevant. The difference between home-brewed coffee and Starbucks is $1,000 a year, tops. It won't make you rich, and it won't keep you poor. What moves the needle are the macro decisions. Housing costs, vehicle choices, savings rate, asset allocation. These choices swing your net worth by huge margins. So instead of agonizing over grocery prices, you focus your bandwidth on maximizing income and optimizing your portfolio. This focus shift is liberating. You stop pinching pennies and start building an empire. Now let's discuss the impact on your career, because this is where the leverage really kicks in. Having $20,000 liquid doesn't just change your bank balance, it changes your posture at work. When you live check to check, you are held hostage by your employer. A bad boss, toxic culture, or boring work. You have to swallow it because you need the deposit on the 1st and the 15th. You have zero leverage. You can't demand a raise, you can't set boundaries, and you can't look elsewhere because the risk is too high. But $20,000 flips the table. You suddenly possess what I call walk-away power. You could resign tomorrow and be fine for months. This doesn't mean you should be reckless, but it means you negotiate from a place of abundance, not desperation. This psychological safety net changes how you perform. You ask for the promotion because you aren't terrified of a no. You reject unreasonable deadlines. You interview for better roles. And wildly enough, just having that money makes you more confident, which usually leads to better treatment and higher pay. It's a positive feedback loop. Financial safety creates career confidence, which creates more income, which builds more safety. However, there is a massive trap where people ruin this progress, and I see it happen all the time. People hit that $20,000 mark, feel the relief, and then immediately torch it on a liability. They think, I've been so good I deserve a new car, or a luxury trip, or a down payment on a house that will stretch them too thin. Do not do this. That $20,000 is not a trophy to be spent. It is the concrete slab foundation of your skyscraper. It is the seed corn for your generational wealth. This might hurt to hear, but the average person spends more on vehicles in their lifetime than it would take to fully retire. Between the loan, insurance, and gas, people bleed $600 to $800 a month on cars. Over a career, that is hundreds of thousands of dollars just to drive around. Yet they claim they can't afford to invest. It's like paying for a premium gym membership you never use while complaining you can't afford healthy groceries. The real kicker: as soon as you drive that new car home, you lose 20% of the value. You aren't just spending, you are incinerating wealth. Compare that to investing the same cash. One evaporates, the other multiplies. I get it. Cars are emotional. We want to look successful. We want reliability. And that's fine, provided you know the true cost. That car payment isn't just a monthly bill, it's the opportunity cost of what that money could have become. A $30,000 car today is $200,000 of lost retirement money later. Suddenly, the used Honda looks a lot sexier. It's not a sacrifice, it's a strategic move to buy your freedom. The person in the luxury sedan is likely stressed about the payment. The person in the older sedan is quietly getting rich. This filter applies to everything: houses, trips, gadgets. You start weighing the opportunity cost, not in a way that makes you miserable, but in a way that makes you intentional. And surprisingly, you realize you don't actually want half the stuff you thought you did. That bigger apartment, nice but not worth working 5 extra years for. That expensive toy, fun but momentary. This isn't about being a miser. It's about clarity. When you understand compound interest, it's easy to separate what you think you want from what you actually want. Look, $20,000 won't let you retire on a yacht tomorrow, but it will fundamentally alter your reality. It is the bridge between surviving the chaos and designing your life. Start pouring that foundation today, because the future version of you is begging you to make the right choice right now. Trust me, they will thank you.